Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Amazing Outdoors. This podcast is being presented by Upland Outfitters, home of the Relentless pants, man. Those things are awesome. I had them out this week, and I pretty much, since I started the partnership with Jason, have been wearing those pants out anytime over the summer here where I had to do any work at the farm or dog training. I've even had them on the boat a little bit. They are tough as nails. I have yet to see a pull 'em thread. I've been in some nasty briars. They really held up a lot better than I thought. I can't recommend them enough. Hunting season is around the corner. Make sure you use discount code AMAZING, and I believe Jason is still offering 20% off on the Relentless pants. So pick up a pair before hunting season is upon us, and you're out in the woods with a ripped up pair of pants and sweating, unnecessarily, because Jason's pants and the Relentless pants are top notch and breathable, light. So you're going to want them this early season. Make sure you get them now. I also have a quick announcement. We've got another kind of temporary partnership with Chippewa River Custom Rods. Tom is going to be offering 10% off with discount code AMAZING10. AMAZING10. And it's all caps. If you decide to call him for a custom rod, just make sure you tell him that you heard about custom rods on Amazing Outdoors podcast, and he will make sure that you get hooked up with a discount. All that information for both sponsors and partners are going to be in the show notes, so please support the podcast and these great companies. They are really good partners for the podcast, and I would like to see our listeners support them as well. So look them up, Uplnd Outfitters and Chippewa River Custom Rods. Enjoy today's show. Greetings, everyone. We're here for another episode. I didn't fall off the face of the earth. I had to take a little break. Things got a little busy around the home front. Pole shed's up. Got a bunch of stuff I have to do there. Kitchen project. Wife's company, my company. And unfortunately, some boat issues. I got a wooden boat, and yeah, I'll put some pictures out on Instagram. It's almost done. Anyways, today's episode, I sit down with my local, what I consider my home waters, the Fisheries Biologist. She's a very interesting gal. We had a great conversation today, and I'm going to try to edit this up and try to get it up actually tomorrow. But yeah, I learned a lot about the local water, some things I didn't know, and got to know Kasey pretty well through the conversation. And I think she's going to come back because we didn't quite get to all the different things we uncovered today. So I hope you enjoy today's episode. I sit down with Kasey Yaley. She's a Wisconsin DNR fisheries biologist for Pierce County, Dunn County, and St. Croix County. Kasey, I just want to welcome you to Amazing Outdoors here, the podcast. It's awesome to have. We have not done enough fishing-related topics lately. I'm a huge bird hunter, so just so you're aware, that's kind of where we got started here. And I started trout fishing years ago when I moved over to the Twin Cities about a decade. So when I had the opportunity to talk to you, I was glad to get you on the podcast. So welcome. You're very welcome. Can you give everybody an introduction?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Kasey Yaley. I live in Menominee, Wisconsin right now. I'm the DNR fisheries biologist for St. Croix, Pierce, and Western Dunn County, stationed out of Baldwin right now.
So you got a little bit of a commute every day.
Yeah, just a little bit. I mean, it's not too bad. It's about half an hour, and
have they fixed all that construction over there?
No, there's plenty of construction going on right now. So anyway, I pick to get to work, it's not good.
Yeah, I've avoided that area myself for almost a year. I got to think now that I've been through there a few times, but if I have the opportunity to drive through the country and take a few extra minutes, it seems to at least for me, I do better.
Yeah, it's not bad. There's a bunch of different ways I can pick to go, and I can kind of check out some of the streams along the way, so it's kind of nice. Candy.
You got into the with the DNR. What exactly is what does the fisheries biologist really do? Can you give us a little bit of an understanding of your job kind of function, and then how'd you get into it and all that?
Yeah, great question. So I am a management biologist, a fisheries management biologist. There's a couple of different fisheries biologists. You can also be in research, or you can be in propagation, which is the hatchery system. So I'm a management biologist, and I cover, like I said, 2.5 counties in my area. So I cover all the streams, lakes, and rivers in those 2.5 counties. And what that means is we survey all the fish populations within those bodies of water, and we get different parameters, different population demographics on each species, from each lake, each stream. We obviously can't sample them all in a single year, so we do have a system that we go by to get all of these sampled, and our sampling basically tells us what's going on with the population currently. Sure. And based off of our data, we can make management recommendations on how to manage the fisheries. But a huge part of my job is managing people. And basically customer service for anybody and everybody who has questions or anything fishery related.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Sounds kind of busy.
It's very busy. Yeah.
I came out of account management and sales background, and kind of unique. I was independent, so we managed a number of different companies for a geographic territory, kind of similar. And and we had a lot of people to answer to, and I know how managing people and expectations are.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's harder than managing the fisheries for sure.
I often used to say back in my previous career, it was we called the manufacturers we represented in the area principals, and our customers. It was so much easier to sell the customer on. It was so hard to sell the principal or the manufacturer on why this deal was a good thing for them.
Right, I bet. Oh my gosh.
So some similar stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's a lot for sure.
So how'd you end up in Wisconsin, and where are you from?
So I'm originally from Southern Illinois, very different than the rest of Illinois. I always want to point that out. People say, "Oh, I'm from Illinois," and they think Chicago. I'm not from Chicago. I've only been there one time in my life. I'm from about an hour and a half north of Cairo, Illinois, which is the furthest southern town in Illinois. So I grew up there, grew up on a farm.
You grew up by the S1E National Forest area.
Yeah, yep, exactly.
Beautiful country down there. It's a lot like the Driftless, actually, at least in at least the landscape that you look at. I've been through that area before.
Yeah, okay. super cool. Yeah, exactly how you described it. It's very similar. Yeah, it's a
Great
great
deer hunting.
area. Great deer hunting. Yeah, I grew up on a farm, so we had really good deer hunting. And that's one of my passions. I bow hunt a lot. So I grew up down there. And the job pretty much is what led me to Wisconsin. There was a bunch of stuff in between. So I worked in Missouri quite a bit for several years in fisheries. I
Really?
also worked, yeah, loved that. It wasn't very far from home. It was about an hour from home.
What part of Missouri, if you don't mind me asking? I've got some friends down that way.
Oh yeah, southeast Missouri. I was Cape Girardeau, Jackson area.
Okay. So you Ozarks area.
Yes, yeah, yeah. It was great. I
We'll
love
have to talk.
Missouri.
We might have to talk about smallmouth down that way.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's outstanding down there.
Yeah, I've got a drift boat, and I'm waiting for a sponsor to actually send me a raft, and it's supposed to be here at the end of the month. I'm just a little impatient. So.
Oh, gotcha. That's exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's part of the. I wanted to be a bird hunting guide, right? But bird hunting season's only so long, and I can't. And
Right.
there's a huge gap in the year there. And I've been fishing the St. Croix and in a lot of the rivers, and
Nice.
maybe couple of them in your area that for smallmouth for a long time. And yeah, I got it. Well, actually, yeah, you probably manage part of the red cedar. So
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
well, there's other things we can talk about than just trout fishing today, I guess. Then too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I cover the red cedar, the St. Croix, and the apple. So.
Oh well, I just bought a farm myself, actually. I'm originally from Wisconsin. I currently live in the Twin Cities. I made the mistake a long time ago of moving over this way, and I've been a fish out of water, pun intended, for a long time. And we finally put some roots down over in western Wisconsin near a farm that I lease up in Polk County. And
okay.
so, yeah, I'm in actually the Polk County portion of the Apple River is just right down the road from me. And yeah, it's
Nice.
a great fishery, actually. It's really surprised me over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty outstanding for sure. I like the apple a lot. It's got a lot to offer.
It does. And it's got a little bit of a bad rap because of, I think, some of the tubing operations and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's not really looked at in the sense that I think a lot of people would look at it from a fishing perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's underutilized, probably for the reason that you mentioned. But yeah, it's got a great smallmouth fishery.
So you bow hunted, or you still bow hunt, and
Still bow hunt. Yeah,
you're in Menominee. Have you picked up a bow here in Wisconsin yet?
for sure. Yep. Yeah.
Now, I don't know how the seasons work in Illinois, but I do know that I have well, actually last year was the first year I bought a tag in 11 years of being a Minnesota resident for deer. I just could never come to their gun season starts here, the first full weekend in November. And it's just absolutely sacrilegious growing up in Wisconsin to not be in the tree with a bow at that time. So,
yes.
I was kind of curious if you've seen any similarities to how bow hunting runs in Minnesota or Illinois in comparison to Wisconsin, because they have a big bow hunt during the rut too. I know that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The Illinois season is very similar to Wisconsin, but Wisconsin does start 15 days earlier. So Illinois always starts on October 1st.
That's right.
So here we can get a little bit earlier, but it's very similar. I mean, I have private land in Southern Illinois. And here I've got to get out and compete on public land. So that's the main difference for me. But I love it. I mean, there's tons of properties to explore. So I really like getting to know all the properties. And
there is, and, you've got access to other biologists and people who are out on some of those properties. So,
yeah, and I really haven't utilized that.
I would be leveraging that a little bit if I worked in your position. So,
yeah, I haven't utilized that as much as I should. I just kind of get out there on my own. But I also, part of my job that I didn't mention earlier is I'm a property manager. So I do manage all of our fisheries properties.
Oh,
You know,
sure.
in
So
my
I've
county. So,
actually hunted some of those properties now that you mentioned
oh,
that.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep. I mean, there's a couple of them that have at least a little CRP on them, and I've ran the dogs on them during hunting season. Can't remember
nice.
actually killing anything on them, but they
Right.
are definitely geared for fishing usually, or acquired, I'm assuming, for easement purposes.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, a lot of them, you know, are swampy. So they're pretty tough to hunt. But yeah, I don't hunt a lot of those. I hunt mostly MFL or whatever kind of properties there are. But
Well, there's
yeah,
one that
it's
we should talk about that I could probably give you a few pointers on. That I'm fairly certain you probably manage.
okay.
If you're interested. I don't want to,
Yeah, for
be
sure.
that, but yeah, we're not going to do it on the podcast. I don't want to hotspot
Okay.
things that bad. You don't need 30 guys out there in the trees next to you, like I've seen.
Yeah, make it super popular.
Yeah, gun hunting can be kind of ridiculous in Wisconsin. That's kind of, I'm like you, passionate. I grew out of a passion of bow hunting, and
Yeah,
I got a couple dogs a few years ago, and just the dynamics of things, and family, and wanting to spend more time doing outdoors things with them, and the reluctance to sit in a tree stand by a few people in the family here in November when it's cold. Bird
yeah,
hunting, seemed to gravitate a little bit more. And I don't know. I grew up in northeast Wisconsin, and we hunted Alpaca County, which is a pretty well known county in Wisconsin for fairly large whitetails. So I was exposed to a lot of that. And as much as I still love to do it, and you won't find me doing much else unless my tag's filled the first week in
yeah,
November.
right.
I got into some other things, and trout fishing and river fishing and pointing dogs was kind of a few of those things. So that's kind of why we started the podcast, because I had so much exposure to different outdoor activities, and I constantly seek adventure and want to try new things. So this is a fun way to express some of that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I really enjoy all of that. For sure, bow hunting. But yeah, gun season, I don't mess with that. I did the first 2 years I was here, and it's just like a city out in the woods. So I just haven't. My boyfriend does have land up north. So we do go up there. But
Up
yeah,
north's a little
around this area.
tougher.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
does your boyfriend live in the Menominee area?
Yep.
Well,
Yeah, he
we
does.
should talk afterwards. I've got 200 acres that I lease, and come gun
Oh, okay.
season, we need a little herd management this year. So if you need to fill some tags, I might be able to help out with that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not too terribly far north of. I'm probably about 40 minutes north of Baldwin, so not
Oh,
not
okay.
outside of your area.
Yeah, awesome.
So
Sounds good.
so let's talk a little bit about kind of a couple of the discussion topics I threw out there today.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I cut you off. You said you spent some time in Missouri, and then we started talking smallmouth, and we got down a little bit
Oh,
of a rabbit hole. Where
yeah,
where
yeah.
where else have you spent some time in your career? Because I think you were
Yeah.
out west, right?
So, yeah, yeah, went to Missouri, worked on the big rivers, the Mississippi, Missouri, Ohio, worked on all of those. So all warm water stuff. Then I got a job out west in Idaho, the panhandle of Idaho. So worked out there for a few years on the Coeur d'Alene and the St. Joe River, which are pretty well known for West Slope cutthroat. And it was outstanding. Loved that job. Really missed it. But I had to come back and further my education. So got my master's degree back at Southern Illinois. And then I just started applying for biologist level jobs, and then that's how I ended up here in Baldwin. So
Right on. I'm,
yeah,
the area is great. I have traveled all over the Midwest, and I'm a small to medium town kind of guy, and that's just
yeah,
where I seem to fit in best. And that
yeah,
94 corridor in western Wisconsin offers just so much diversity from an outdoor recreating opportunity. And
yes,
it's not super overpopulated, but you still get some of and then you're close to the big city if you need to do any of that stuff. So
Right.
I find it really, I don't know. I love it. That's why I put my roots down and put some cash in the ground over there.
Yeah, it's awesome. I had a choice between a few different places in Wisconsin when I was offered this job, and I had only been to La Crosse. Like, I'd otherwise never set foot in Wisconsin, and I chose Baldwin, and I'm so glad I did because I totally agree. It's very diverse. It's got, upstanding natural resources, so I love it for sure.
Well, I grew up, my brother was actually born in, Onalaska, Wisconsin. And
okay.
we lived over there where I vaguely remember a few things from over there. We were very young, but, that area is not too bad to, you wouldn't have to twist my arm too much to move down there either.
Gotcha.
The whole, really that driftless area is very neat. And that's why the, Menominee area, you kind of touch that northern fringe of it. And, you got basically the driftless, 10, 20 minutes, 5 minutes south, depending on where you are on 94. And then depending on, again, where you are, you can, within an hour, you can be in the big woods.
Yeah, definitely.
So
that's kind of close to everything.
Exactly. Well, what's going on with the DNR in your area? Like, is there any initiatives or anything that anglers and even, hunters should be aware of that's going on over there right now?
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff.
Obviously you got the Kinney, and I think, you've got some brook trout habitat restoration stuff you guys are working on, but that was stuff that, I've kind of stumbled upon. We can chat about any of that, but is there anything else that, I may not know about? I guess we didn't even put really warm water on the table. Or fisheries properties,
Yeah, I could go all along on. So we've got the Rush River Creel going right now.
And being a manager, I want to give you a soapbox to kind of stand on, talk to the public, and an opportunity to kind of, if there's anything we need to know. So please, by all means.
Okay.
Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
I think you were mentioning the Rush River stuff.
Yeah. I was going to mention that first. Rush River Creel is going on. I've got a creel course down there several days a week. That's just to gauge, harvest rates and angler use of the river. Creel surveys are super important to document that, and how, much fish are being exploited, and just the pressure on the river and kind of angler demographics. And a creel has not been done on the Rush, for over 20 years. So it's way overdue. So that's going
20
on.
years?
Over 20 years. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So all those numbers that we had of like, I don't know, it was like maybe 4,800 or 3,600 trout per mile. Those come from 20 years ago?
No. This is just a creel survey. So we're surveying anglers.
Okay.
We do our fish surveys every year.
Okay.
So I've got up-to-date numbers on that, but the creel survey, for angler demographics and harvest rates, that hasn't been done over 20 years.
Okay.
I think that's a good thing to point out, because I think people get that mixed up.
Yeah, I mean, you guys do a lot of different metrics in surveys, so understanding what some of those mean, I think, like you said, do help.
Yeah, for sure. Good point. So we got the Rush River Creel going on. The easement program is a huge thing. I know a lot of trout anglers and a lot of members of TU that I work with are aware of the easement program. A lot of people fish our easements. But
I've fished plenty of them.
Okay, awesome. That's good to know. Usually they're super popular, but
I guess real quick, since you mentioned the easement stuff, from a landowner's perspective, and maybe not somebody that currently is considered an easement.
Yeah.
There's kind of a stigma, I think. Is there something you can do to kind of alleviate that? Can you explain a little bit about what the landowner benefit would be long term from that? Because you look at some of the waters out there, and I think there's this, I don't know. I mean, we can't not look at some of the other things like birds and stuff like that, and look at row crop and say that it's helping. I mean, it's not. We know that it's not. And then all the other farm issues that come along with pesticides and fertilizers and the loss of topsoil into the streams. I mean, these things are real. But I think that, a lot of times that gets put on, the blame gets put on the farmer, and it's really unfair because they're cutting a living out of the soil. And it's different from a lot of the people that show up on the weekends to fly fish or whatever. So can you kind of draw that circle for us and maybe help that equation?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I grew up on a farm, so I know where they're coming from. And it's hard because our easement easements are perpetual, meaning they last forever. So
it's a loss of property to them.
Some of them think of that way.
Yeah,
think of it that way.
That's kind of the stigma that I was kind of pushing towards.
Yeah. So it goes, after if someone signs up for an easement, it goes on their deed, so it lasts forever. But the landowner still owns the land, and they can still treat it as they have always treated it. They cannot, build any kind of buildings or residence within the easement. So the easement does prevent it from being developed. But we can still do, if they graze the stream or the easement, we can do a grazing contract. We can do all kinds of things to where they can still do what they do. They can still hunt and fish and use it however they wish, even after they get the easement. But some of the things that the easement program helps them with, we do pay pretty good money for them. It's per acre. For current market value, each easement gets valued a little differently based on what the landowner has on their property and their proximity to, cities or different populations. But so they get paid for it, and it also gives us the right to do a trout habitat project on their property if we so choose. It may never happen, but it gives us the right to do that. Those are usually several $100,000 projects that gets done on that landowner's property at no cost to the landowner. So they're getting any erosion problems fixed. They're getting that loss of topsoil and all of that other stuff fixed. Sometimes we can help them out with other issues that's happening within the easement as well. So it's a really good deal for the landowners if they do sign up. We can manage the vegetation. If they've got invasive species on their property in the easement, we can help take care of those. So there's a lot of good that comes out of it, but I know landowners are really scared of losing that control. A lot of them think we're going to come in and just control everything if they sign up for the easement, and they're just scared of that. It's not worth it to them. So it's really hard sometimes.
Yeah, and especially in other states. Wisconsin is, I think, a little unique in that sense that landowners do not own the water rights.
Right.
Even though some of them think they do.
Right.
And so it is still a problem dynamic, but in Wisconsin, it is a little bit unique to that sense that, the landowners on parts of the Rush River that aren't in easement, they're used to seeing fishermen in that river.
Right. Right, for sure.
Yeah. It's not like out west where you can't drop a boat anchor.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And another thing I always like to point out is that, this easement, since it does last forever, it's going to, because a lot of them are concerned with what's going to happen to their land in the future, after they're gone. Well, this easement program is going to protect it forever.
Yeah, there's a legacy component to it.
Yes, exactly.
And I've fished a lot of those, actually. Some of that Rush River properties that have been donated to either the Sportsman's Club or even I think some of the Trimble properties, those came off generational kind of legacy type deeded access to the DNR.
Right.
That they would either you guys purchased or people gave to you guys. So,
right.
And gals, sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm just, I'm just a Wisconsin boy that drinks a little bit of beer and loves hunting and fishing. So excuse me.
No, you're totally fine. I'm very similar. So the easement program is a great program for landowners if they want to get involved in something like that. We've
Is that
also
a
got
state level program too, or is there any other dynamics
it.
to it?
It is a state level program.
Okay.
But only certain streams are eligible for easements. Only only certain trout streams and smallmouth bass streams. Everything is not included in that. So it's a select few, based on how much people are going to fish it, how much we want to protect it, because we can't, we try to focus our efforts, instead of like opening up the whole thing and, then we could end up focusing on something that's less important. So we try to pick and choose, at
Sure.
different times. So, that may change in the future, but right now it's a select few streams. So.
Yeah, obviously there's a strategic aspect to it. I mean, if the DNR is going to put in a couple $100,000, I would hope that it holds trout or smallmouth.
Right. Yes. Yes, for sure. Yeah, we definitely try to focus our efforts on those streams. For sure. So yeah, easement program. We also have a brook trout reserve program, where.
So what's that?
Good question. So it's also a statewide initiative, but there are select streams that have been selected for this program based on many different criteria. A lot of modeling went into this, from USGS and all, different types of agencies. Data went into selecting these streams. So brook trout reserve streams are basically streams that are predicted to be able to hold brook trout into the future despite a warming climate. So these streams are selected. I have several in my area that I manage, and it's based on many different things: connection to groundwater, brown trout presence, land use in the area. So many different things have went into this. So these streams, we try to focus our efforts. Do we manage these intensively? Do we focus our efforts on habitat work and restoration, or do we just try to acquire land and protect it if it's already in good shape? So these are a few different things, and I think one topic we're going to get to is Katy Creek. And Katy Creek is one of those brook trout restoration streams, or brook trout reserve streams. So
I actually looked at some property a few years ago, and I declined to, even put an offer in on it after I found out. But there was a habitat deed for that piece of property, and I believe it was due to it was some of the headwater springs of Katy Creek. It was just kind of southeast of Spring Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked it. You can access the very tiny parts of Katy Creek from that particular road. It's just a gorgeous little 20 acres or 19 acres it was. And, but you couldn't build on it.
Gotcha.
But it was private land, but there was some kind of gifted DNR protected status for that piece of property. It was on the deed, and it was real bummer because it would have been just so gorgeous to have a nice little home on the road, and you could leave the 15 acres alone and just, have beautiful, brook trout habitat in the backyard. But anyways, Katy Creek's a very interesting creek, and I have to imagine there's some challenges because the Ogallie, it's a tributary to the Ogallie River, correct?
Correct.
And I know that there's all kinds of warm water species in the Ogallie River, which they have to migrate up north to a certain degree.
Yeah.
So
how go ahead.
Yeah. So how does playing in that kind of different water within, really, when a person looks at Katy Creek, it's not a very big creek. No. It's longer. It's a fairly long. I think it's maybe 10 miles long. Yeah.
The trout water's right around 10 miles.
Okay.
And there's some headwater tributaries up there too. But
even, distance and width wise, it's not very, very big. It's overlooked for the most part in the area. At least I think some of the upper waters, because it's tight. So
right.
How does that stream dynamic And when you look at managing that stream, how do you make decisions based on where the water's at and how quick does it warm up?
Katie's very cold. It's one of the colder ones that I manage. It's got a ton of spring influence, ton of groundwater connection. So it's very well off on the temperature side of things, which is why it is a brook trout reserve stream. And it historically was 100% brook trout. There were no browns in there in any surveys that I can find. Going back decades.
You guys have quite a bit of eeasement actually on that river.
Yes, we got.
I'm looking at.
I think it's like 4 to 5 miles.
I'm just looking at it right now.
Yeah, 4 to 5 miles of easement, and all of that. Most of it has had habitat restoration work done on it. So, banks are stable. There's a ton of habitat. The fisheries outstanding. Easy access. It's beautiful. It's in a beautiful valley. So Katie's outstanding. So the main issue that has occurred in Katie is kind of the invasion of brown trout coming up from the Ogallie.
Sure.
So, like you said, Katie is a tributary, some of the major tributaries to the Ogallie. Ogallie is a little bit warmer, it's just a little bit bigger. But it isn't as warm as a lot of people think. We did a survey on the Ogallie 2019. And, people, I think in the past have thought, and it used to be warmer. I mean, a lot of the streams used to be warmer. But the increased groundwater levels and connection have really increased in the past few decades. So a lot of rivers have gotten colder. So the Ogallie, we surveyed it in the heat of summer, July, August, and pretty far down the watershed. The thermals were really, really nice. Perfect for brook trout. So that was really impressive, really cool to see. But historically, people have thought of it as a warmer river, so it's always been a brown trout stock fishery. It's
Sure.
class 2 in most of the sections. So we do stock it. But the stocking regime kind of changed. This was before my time. Changed from stocking what we call domestic strain brown trout. So we raise these in our hatchery systems. They're just kind of a hatchery strain brown trout. That changed to feral strain brown trout, or what we call our timber coulee strain. These are fish that we, my counterpart down in the Crossy helps collect eggs and fish for our hatchery systems to be stocked around the state. So the strain of stocked brown trout in the Ogallie changed. This has been around 2005. So after that, fishery service started picking up browns a few years after that stocking change in Katy Creek. It's never happened before.
Sure. I suppose because they're used to, genetically, they're probably used to cooler water.
They might be used to cooler water. They just seem to have more vigor. They're a little more aggressive. They like to move a little bit more.
Sure.
They have better success at spawning.
Well, yeah, they're used to the conditions.
yeah, exactly. So they're overall, they're better at all of those things.
That's a really interesting dynamic that I imagine you guys didn't expect to see something like that. So have you done has anyone done any specific research into that?
I've been trying to do a lot myself because it's happened in other streams in my area as well. It's not just Katy.
When did the stocking program change, if you don't mind me asking?
That was in right around 2005. So part of my job is I mandate all of the stocking in my area. So I can say I want this strain of fish. I want this many of them and this size at whatever time of the year they're available. So that's part of my job is I recommend stocking in all the waters. So that's like one of the biologist's job is to do that. So
do you recommend, just a random quick question, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, for sure.
You also do warm water stuff, so you do recommend stocking for muskies then too?
Yeah, I cover all of that.
Wow,
yeah.
Awesome. So yeah. we might have you back on the podcast.
Okay.
There's so much to talk about. I didn't know that you covered all that stuff. So
Yeah,
I
there
would
is a
have.
lot, and I could go on about Katy forever.
Well, sure, and it's an interesting creek. I really do think it is. I've fished it, probably maybe 30 times over the last 10 to 11 years.
Okay.
And I've seen some very interesting things. I mean, I've fished fairly far up, and I caught smallmouth and brook trout and brown trout in that stream.
Yeah, for sure. I know. Yeah. Yeah, and historically, there's
Well,
all brook trout.
and just the topic of the change in stocking strain, and so another question
Yeah.
related to that is are those fish out of the historic timber coulee then down in just southeast of La Crosse there?
Well, yes. So
Okay.
the stocking changed from what we call domestic to that timber coulee strain. So the timber coulee feral stockfish were going into the Ogalle around 2005, beginning in 2005. So that's when
Okay.
about 4 or 5 years later, they started picking browns up in Katy. So
Okay.
those were likely the progeny of those stockfish.
Very interesting.
And yeah, and then ever since then, the browns started increasing, and once they got to a certain level, the brook trout really started taking a hit, and their numbers went pretty significantly down. And they're at a pretty low level currently as well. I am taking a lot of management action on Katy Creek to help out with this situation. I can totally go into that if you want me to. But,
Yeah, no, I'm very curious, and if there's an opportunity again for you to call to action a little bit on the public side, if there's any funding mechanisms that you guys are looking for, donations or anything that you can work into the conversation that can help you in the long term achieve some of these goals, by all means. The microphone's yours.
Yeah. Well, I would highly encourage harvesting browns in Katy. Highly encourage it. I changed the regulations in 2019 to allow a little bit more liberal harvest on browns in Katy, and I'm planning to change it again to even further liberalize harvesting browns in there, as well as Pine Creek, too. Pine Creek down by Maiden Rock. Similar situation.
That's a creek I really do want to explore a little bit more, because I believe some of that creek goes underground.
It did for part of the stream. However, I think it was last year. I'm getting my dates mixed up. The groundwater is so high it started flowing above ground there,
really?
where it had historically been low. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
So,
anyways,
yeah, super crazy. But yes, so Pine Creek has also been invaded by browns. They've pretty much taken over. It's in worse shape than Katy as far as the trout population.
I guess another quick question, and let's get back to Katy Creek here in a second. But
yeah,
this has always been a curiosity of mine, and I'm assuming it happens, but I don't know, and I've never talked to anybody that's had the knowledge that could answer the question. Pine Creek and Isabella Creek and the Rush, the Trimble, they all pour out into mostly Lake Pepin.
right.
And during the winter time, some of those creeks, barely flow enough to hold any life to a certain degree. So do those fish migrate out into the waters of, of the Mississippi River during the winter time? And do they, I mean, I'm assuming those browns are coming in from probably the Rush River.
Yes, for sure.
Okay. That's why I'm asking the question. So
yeah, we can't say for sure, but that is very likely what happened. Yeah.
I've never really asked or had a connection down in the Lake Pepin area during ice fishing season to, get any reports. And I was kind of a technological hermit up until about 3 months ago. I didn't have Facebook, or I had a LinkedIn account professionally, but that was it. So, gotcha. I'm not necessarily updated all the time in today's technology world. So I never really heard of anything that confirmed that for me. And I don't know if anybody's done any research on it.
Yeah. I mean, Pine Creek, it was same deal as Katy. It was always a brook trout stream.
Mm-hmm.
And then brown started showing up. So I'm sure they came out of the rush, went down into the mist like Pepin and into Pine Creek.
Does the DNR and your or your opinion, I guess it doesn't really matter whose opinion it is, but is that due to, stream conditionings or stream temperatures warming and condition changes? Is that the thought process?
Pine Creek, it's probably the coldest stream that I have in my area. It'll be in the mid 50s in the middle of the summer.
Sure.
I mean, it's pretty much
so conditions haven't necessarily changed, and that's kind of what maybe is the alarming factor to you guys, that these browns are showing up.
Water temp hasn't changed,
okay,
but we did do a ton of habitat work in Pine Creek and Katy Creek.
Okay, so there's
about the same time
too.
About the same time that this started happening, and I don't think. Well, I mean, browns just seem to really take advantage of our habitat work really well, and I just think they outcompete the brook trout for our, usual habitat techniques that we use. And I think
there's a lot of different things in the wildlife that our forefathers had to introduce. And some of my bird hunting friends might curse me for saying this, but they had to introduce ringnecks here, and we're seeing the detriment of bobwhite quail and sharp-tails and prairie chickens, sage grouse. I could go on in rapid numbers, and again, nothing against pheasants forever. They do great habitat work, but when the goal is to have trout in the stream or birds out in the field, and they're not necessarily native species to North America, these char species that are brook trout, they're not even really trout, and some of these native bird species really, really struggle. Competition's tough. It's it is people don't want to necessarily look at it as an invasive species because it's a game species, but at the end of the day, it technically is.
Yeah, for sure. That's a very good comparison, with the pheasants and the brown trout. Because like I said, brook trout are our only native trout species in Wisconsin. So yeah, it's hard. Especially when I say, go out and harvest brown trout. It's people swallow that pill very roughly.
Well, I'll have to remember that because I'm not a huge fan of eating stream trout, and I'll be honest, I prefer brook trout.
Yeah.
But brown trout are very good smoked, and if I know the numbers are liberal, my wife will be very dissatisfied if I don't come home with a few for the smoker. So I'll have to remember that as I look for a few activities to do here over the summer.
Yeah, for sure. But Pine Creek, what I was getting at with the habitat work, we did habitat work about the same time as browns started showing up and really increasing. And I don't think, I think browns, like I said, take advantage of our habitat work, and they just outcompete the brook trout for it. But I think it's the disturbance that allows them to come in. They can handle a little bit more adverse conditions than brook trout, and I think it's the disturbance that might be playing a role.
Sure.
And then,
you see that with habitat management with birds and other wildlife. When you create good conditions, all wildlife seem to increase. Right. Yeah. So I would imagine the same principles, exist with habitat work in a stream. It's a lot of, I'm assuming wildlife techniques, they kind of cross pollinate between different species.
Right. Yes, for sure. Yeah. It benefits both of them, but the browns just really seem to outcompete the brookies. And it's hard because a lot of these areas that we get our easements on, because we can only do habitat projects on easements or areas that have public access, they benefit so much from the habitat work, from erosion control and in-stream sedimentation and lack of habitat. So our habitat work is really, really needed. So we're trying to tweak some things and experiment with things to try to favor brook trout better, because I really feel that habitat work is still worth continuing because we get so many benefits from it. Even though we might have to contend with some brown trout increasing, I think it's more worth it to do the habitat work than to just let it go.
Well, I guess you have to maybe talk to those Trout Unlimited folks a little bit more about the catch and release programs and some some of the areas you want to see more brook trout. I don't necessarily know how you would outcompete that other than harvest.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, harvest, it'll help for sure. So with Katie, another management action I'm taking is brown trout removal. So we are using our electrofishing gear that we normally use to sample streams. We're using that to go in and remove brown trout. We've been doing this every year since 2018. We've removed thousands of browns so far, and we donate those to a local food shelter, so they aren't going to waste. And we are seeing positive results from this removal. But I think the main thing that I'm doing that is hopefully going to help with Katie and the brook trout situation is I changed the stocking regime in the O'Galley to brook trout stocking only. So browns are not getting stocked in the O'Galley anymore. It's only feral brook trout, which I've gotten a lot of questions about.
Sure.
And I totally get it because it is a major change. But like I said, brown trout will probably always be around in the O'Galley. They'll probably be in low abundance. There's going to be probably some trophy-sized browns hanging around in there, but hopefully the numbers are going to drop back. They'll just hang around in low levels, and the pressure will be taken off of Katie with the browns coming in. So
sure.
I think I hope it's going to help a lot. We'll see. We're continuously monitoring.
It sounds like a tough challenge, and you've got competing interests.
Yeah.
Managing
totally.
people again.
Yes. Yes.
I'm sure there's an education component to some of those areas, because I think it's the O'Galley Sportsman Club, and some of those areas have just roots that are tough to change and educate, and tough stuff. Sometimes
right.
there's always somebody in the group to make it difficult on you.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, like I said, I've got a lot of questions, good questions. But I tried to do as much outreach as I could before I made all of these changes, just so it wasn't like a surprise and people know the background of it. So hopefully, I did that as much as I could. But yeah, that's another. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast, because hopefully more people will be aware of this situation and why. So.
Yeah, no, and that's really the goal with a lot of this is, hey, maybe I can also inspire a few people to go out and take a few brown trout out of Katy Creek for you, and it all helps. And just creating awareness and inspiring others to do some stuff and get outside. And in today's world, it's very easy to get lost on a computer and let the kids sit in front of the game console all day long. So,
right, totally agree. Yeah, it's awesome.
What else we got to talk about here? I kind of got into a couple pages as we were talking about Katy Creek and looking at some of the easements that you guys had, because I don't recall all those. You probably made some recent easement purchases there in the last, I'd say, 10 years.
In Katy?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I did. So I've only been here for 3 years, but I did make several easement purchases within 3 years that I've been here on Katy, and a bunch of other streams too. I think I've gotten 17 since I've been here. Yeah, but there's 3 new ones on Katy, and we're actually our trout habitat crew is going to start work downstream of County Highway P, probably in the next week or two. It's going to be our next trout habitat project in the area, so that's coming up. That's a 2-year project, so they'll be working on that this year and next.
Okay. And yeah, that's in some of the heart of the better parts of that stream, I would say.
Yeah. It's a little bit bigger water. It'll be easier to fish. So, yeah, I'm excited for it. We're going to be trying out, experimenting with our brook trout focused habitat techniques, and practices. So, yeah, so that's ongoing as well in Katy. There's a lot going on in Katy.
Yeah, I've fished that. There's an easement there on a farm that goes through a pasture, and that's
Yeah,
fairly far south, in that stream, if I recall. But
yes,
actually,
yeah,
it goes quite a bit past that. But um, it's a beautiful stretch, and I know that it got really tight, and the easement dropped off. I think if I want to say not too far north of that. So I wonder if the easement that you guys are working on is in that area, and it'll be neat to see. I'm going to have to get over there and put some miles on and cover the stream one of these days, because it looks like you could probably go for about 4 miles, 5 miles.
yeah, yeah, that's about right. Yeah, you can go a really
Oh,
long
there you
way.
go. Yeah, actually, you can go almost 5 miles there, and it's almost all connected.
Yes, yep,
That's
it's a really
awesome.
nice stretch. Yeah,
Yeah, that's really a great area. I love. There's a couple little other streams over there too that are pretty. Um, but anyways, well, let's get on with a couple other topics here. Is there anything else going on over there? I'll throw warm water on the table that we need to know about.
yeah, for sure. Well, I did want to mention our habitat program again, because our habitat crew is outstanding. They get a ton of work done every year. Right now they're on Gilbert Creek, just west of Menominee.
Sure.
They're about to finish up with a nice long stretch just south of 29. Um, so
I've looked
that
at
is
fishing that.
another
I've
great
never
stretch.
gone over there.
Okay, I mean, it gets fished fairly hard just because it's pretty close to Menominee,
Yep.
and it is a really nice fishery, Brooks and Brown. Um, and we have a ton of easements and a ton of owned DNR owned land.
Yep.
So there's a lot of access. But yeah, it's definitely worth it to fish. So yeah, that's another thing that's going on. I mean, there's a ton of things. We're doing a lot of warm water stuff
I've actually
too.
now that you mention it, I've woodcock hunted down there by 29 and a hole.
Oh, okay, awesome. Sounds good.
There's
Yeah,
some
it's
nice
another
managed
really pretty
forest
area.
crop. There's some nice managed forest land over there too.
Yes, yep, there is for
It's
sure.
a nice area. I mean, I've always liked Menominee, so
Yeah, yeah, for sure. There's a lot of opportunity.
there is.
Um, yeah, right now we are on change subject, but we're working on sturgeon, lake sturgeon sampling in the St. Croix and the Red Cedar. Right
Are,
now we're just kind of wrapping up with that.
are you
So
really?
yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, we've
Is there
sampled
a season on those fish at all in the St. Croix?
St. Croix. There is. It's in the fall. I don't know the exact
It
dates
is a
this year.
hook and line season.
Hook and line. You have to. Yep, you've got to get a tag. It's 60 inches minimum length limit.
The only reason I'm asking,
Um,
I bought a conservation patron license this year, and I think I do have a hook
okay,
and line tag.
gotcha.
I've seen a few big ones floating. I again, I have a drift boat. I spent a lot of time north of 70 and even south of
Okay.
70, and I've seen some very, very big sturgeon in there.
Yeah, there's some monsters. We saw several that are we're pushing probably 70 inches. They were too big to fit in our dip net, which is
Wow.
crazy, because their dip nets are really large. But yeah, there's some really big fish in there, so it's pretty cool.
Question for you, because you manage this part of the St. Croix, and I don't really hear much about it. And I don't know if it's a hush hush, so excuse me if I'm asking a bad question, but
Okay.
the Asian carp thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you guys seeing numbers of Asian carp?
Not. I mean, they're there for sure. Minnesota DNR has a great surveillance program going on, constantly. So they've got staff that are dedicated to Asian carp, surveillance. And, if there is a report of some, they go out and they try to, capture as many as they can. They've got some tags with acoustic transmitter tags, so they can kind of track them wherever they go. And there is at least one that I know of right now that they have tagged in Lake St. Croix. It's a big head carp. So Asian carp, there's two species that are really composed of that. There's silver carp and big head carp. silver carp are the ones that jump out of the water. Whenever they get disturbed, if a boat goes by or there's loud noise, they'll jump out of the water. So there are silver carp and big head carp present in the St. Croix, the lower St. Croix. I got a report of a dead big head carp last year, and I did go and verify, and it was a big head around Hudson. So they are there. We haven't seen their numbers increase a lot, but in the upper Mississippi, the numbers are kind of increasing. We're getting more and more reports. So unfortunately, they're here. We'll see, what we can do about it or how they respond.
You guys, just knowing the area, and I think this might just be just outside your area, but St. Croix Falls is a fairly large dam. I mean, the waterfall itself is I can't remember how many feet it is, but it's substantially larger than I believe that anything, even downtown Minneapolis has a decent sized spillway, but they still have a lock and dam there.
Right.
That's kind of where at least lock and dam stops, and I think most development all stops, and I think deeded access is back to the feds after the next generation. But is there been anything north of that you guys have seen, or maybe you don't know?
No, not that has been reported. I cover all the way up to St. Croix Falls Dam.
Okay, I was curious.
So yeah, nothing above the dam, and it's likely impassable.
Well, that's really good to know, because I absolutely, people don't really know. I don't feel that people understand the resource that recreators have. Once you hit that St. Croix Falls Dam, even south of that, but I mean, once you hit that St. Croix Falls Dam, there is not much that a boat can pass. And it's so undeveloped. I mean, all the way from north of Hayward, it's a really unbelievable watershed that, those carp would, I think, just absolutely destroy it. And I was very curious and selfish to ask that question. So, I have a guide business that I'm trying to launch on the St. Croix, and I would hate to see something like that ruin that resource in fishery.
Yeah. I worked on silver carp a lot when I was in Southern Illinois and Southeast Missouri. That was like one of the main parts of my job. And I know the St. Croix River from St. Croix Falls downstream, and there is potential for them to potentially get an established population. They may be able to spawn successfully in there, but upstream of the dam, I don't know it very well, but from what I've, talked to other biologists that do work up there, I don't know if the habitat is
conducive
is
to
what
them.
they need to, conducive. Yep, is what they need to successfully spawn and get a population established.
Yeah,
so
and I have no knowledge on what they need to be successful. I'm just like I said, beer drinking and fishing, hunting guy from Wisconsin who hears a lot about it down south and looks at the resources we have up north, and gosh, think about the damage some of that could be done. And even to the lower Croix. It's a gorgeous fishery, and from Hudson all the way up to St. Croix Falls, it's something special.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. It's outstanding. So hopefully, they never do explode in the St. Croix River. Hopefully we just don't see that, but they are there.
Hopefully there's enough muskies in there taking care of them.
Right. Hopefully. There's plenty of predators.
So, I don't know if you have made any big changes in any of the water for muskies at all. Has that been a priority at all for your area?
Well, I don't have a lot of musky water. I do have the St. Croix. We stock the Apple. There are muskie and the red cedar. And I've also got Cedar Lake, which is pretty much my only musky lake. But that's pretty much what I've got for Musky Water. So compared to a lot of other
where's
biologists,
Cedar
I don't
Lake?
have a lot. Cedar Lake is on the Polk St. Croix County line, just north of Star Prairie. It's about
okay. Yeah, I know. Jesus, right in my backyard. So
yeah.
I
It's
forgot
about
about
1,100
that.
acres. Yeah.
That lake gets a fair amount of ice fishing pressure, and similar to a couple other lakes over there that I don't spend a lot of time on.
Okay. Yeah.
They're like the cottage lakes you see in I don't know, like Chautauqua and some of those other areas.
Yeah, for sure. It gets
Too
a
many
lot
damn
of
houses
pressure.
on those lakes.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of pressure. But if you do enjoy fishing for muskie, I would highly recommend it. I mean,
Really?
it does get a lot of pressure, and there's a lot. We just did a survey this spring, actually, on Cedar, targeting walleye, muskie, and pike. And then a little bit later, we did
I heard
panfish and
it's a
bass.
walleye factory.
It used to be.
Okay.
It's kind of
A lot of my
dropped
knowledge
off.
is, like I said, not necessarily new.
Yeah, no, you're fine. But I would recommend muskie fishing, if you enjoy that, because got prior to muskie, I'm in the process of doing a population estimate on muskie in Cedar. It hasn't been done before, and it's a 2-year process. We tag all the muskie the first year, and then the next year we go back and try to recapture, and then based off of that ratio of tagged and untagged fish, we can estimate the population size.
Sure.
So I'm doing that right now, but we tagged a lot of muskie in a short amount of time in Cedar, so there's a lot out there. So highly recommend that. The walleye population has kind of dropped off a little bit. Natural reproduction has really dropped off, so that's the main reason why. But Cedar's a great one to try.
Is do you go up to Polk County then? Is that in your management zone?
Well, it's most of the lake is in Polk County. That's not my area, but I do cover Cedar because a little bit is in St. Croix County.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious because then we can, probably talk the Apple River if you want.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
I mean, we got a couple. If you have a little bit of time yet, I've got, probably another 20, 25 minutes. We can BS if you want.
Okay. I mean, I've got a little more time.
Well, let's close with a little bit on the Apple River, and then, if you got any plans or big trips you're going to get out and do any hunting or fishing, and you don't mind sharing, let's close with that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So the apple is one of my favorites. Like I said earlier, I think it's very underrated. But we survey it. Every week our rivers and lakes is on a rotation. So the apple we survey every 8 years. And it just has outstanding smallmouth bass population. There's a lot of trophy-sized fish. Can't remember my numbers, but there's, several trophy-sized fish per mile. I'd have to pull up my exact numbers, but,
I can
plenty of fish over 20 inches. Yeah. Okay.
I was last week. I kind of blew off a lot of responsibilities because, yeah. And I put plenty on the fly rod. I got a bunch of nice fish that were over 4 pounds. We'll put it that way.
Awesome. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It kind of blew me away the first time we sampled it, but yeah, you are for sure correct. Got plenty of nice fish in there, and we do stock it with muskies too.
So how far do those muskies travel throughout the whole Apple River? I know that they in the springtime. I've actually gone and watched them. Hell, all the way up on some of the branches of the Apple River up in northern Polk County. They come up to the dams and they spawn and
right.
But what do they do this time of year?
This time of
year, do they have a
year,
migration pattern?
They do try to travel upriver and spawn generally, but there is a little bit of natural reproduction in the river as well, in addition to our stocking.
Sure.
Not a lot, not probably enough to sustain the population, but there's some. But right now, I would suspect they're probably hanging out, in a little bit slower water, maybe the deeper pools with some cover.
But you would say throughout most of the river?
I would say, yeah, throughout most of the river. I know the stretches that I cover, from Star Prairie to Somerset.
Yeah.
I would say that's where they're hanging out. It's pretty steep gradient there. I don't know what the river's like, in Polk County.
Let's not talk about
a
Polk
little
County.
bit slower. Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, so that's probably horrible musky habitat. But yeah, that's what I would say for, the St. Croix County portion.
And I'm really asking because I haven't really explored the river as much as I really kicking myself in the ass for. I mean, it really blew me away. I bought some land right down the road from the Apple, and I just kind of looked at it from a perspective of driving through Amory and driving through Stillwater quite a bit, and actually getting on the river, it was like, oh my gosh, why have I not been doing it? This is like, and then I bought land and it was just like, oh my God, icing on the cake.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's a really cool river.
So
I wish I was closer.
Well, I have a 12-foot by 58-inch raft coming. That's 3-person.
Okay.
Does your boyfriend like to fish?
He does, but not for muskie.
Does he like smallie fish though?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we'll have to talk after this. Stay in touch. Get you guys out or something. Pro bono on the DNR for all the work you do.
Oh, thank you. Awesome.
Hey, I'm reaping a lot of the benefits from it. So, it's like you said, the Apple's a very interesting river, and I could probably ask you millions of questions about it. But again, historically, I think at least people from the Twin Cities that I know look at it as, oh yeah, that's where people go get drunk and, show their boobs and, all kinds of stuff that, people in their 20s do when they get drunk and tube down a river. We had one of those rivers where I grew up too. And I spent plenty of time down there when I was young and I haven't been back. So, where in that perspective of the river, how is it further down from, say, Somerset? I've never been down there, and is access, it looks like the DNR has quite a bit of land down towards, I would say, the tailwaters of that river out towards the St. Croix. But is it accessible for fishermen?
Yeah, I have not did exploring on that stretch either, to be honest. But we do have, quite a bit of land. But other than that, access is very limited down there.
Okay, so the really, I guess that I know that there's a fair amount of access from, Somerset to Star Prairie.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. That's about it. I mean, there are quite a few, takeout points, for kayaks and canoes and floaters and all of that. But yeah, bridge crossings. But other than that, it's pretty limited.
And I think there's actually a dam or something down at. There is. Yeah, I got Onyx up. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
There's a power company down there. Interesting. I tried to turkey hunt some of that land down there this year and didn't waste a whole lot of time.
Gotcha. Okay.
I had the last 2 weeks of the season, I bought tags and got a few mornings and kind of scratched one bird and had a couple opportunities, but it's pretty tough hunting then. So.
Okay.
It was like 80 degrees. So.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Yeah. It just warmed up so fast.
So I guess last question to close, and if you don't mind, we've kind of come off this interesting June weather pattern. And so now a lot of these streams, I mean, I know the Apple is super low, super, super, super low. And I got to imagine that some of these spring-fed creeks are warmer than they normally are. Is there anything anglers need to be concerned about out fishing? I know that, putting smallmouth bass back this time of year, they're coming off spawn. It's pretty, on a hot day, you want to keep them in the water as best as you can. But is there anything that we need to be really concerned about with the fishery here?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the warmer stream, the bigger the stream, generally it's going to be a little bit warmer. So the rush, the kinney, the willow, the apple,
Yep.
they all warmed up very quickly. Even the St. Croix, we were doing our sturgeon sampling and the water was 81 degrees, which is crazy.
I know. It was
Um,
like bath
for this
water
time
the
of
other
year.
day.
Yeah, it's crazy. So it just stresses the fish out even more. So trout, cold water species, even more so. So
Sure.
if you're out there and the water is very warm, pushing 70, it's very stressful. So, I would try to focus on going early in the morning, later in the day,
Yep.
handle the fish as minimally as possible, get them out, get them back in, unless you plan on keeping them. Um, yeah, just minimize handling, minimize stress of the fish at this high of temperatures. Hopefully it's going to cool down a little bit, which will help things a lot. But yeah, if you don't plan on harvesting that fish, you know, really focus, try to go to the colder streams where it's not so hot, if you are concerned with that. So
Sure.
it can be a very high source of mortality this time of year if it's this warm. So
Okay. It's definitely
yeah,
something I'm a little concerned about because I spend time on the water and I try to make a living at it. But
right,
a lot of anglers that go out for the weekend don't necessarily look at it that way. So it's
right.
something to be conscious about.
Yeah, for sure. And walleye too, any of the cold water, cool water species, walleye, musky, smallmouth, pike, all of those are more sensitive than targets like bass and panfish. So yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. Minimize the handling, focus on colder water.
I've passed up a few muskies in the heat here the last few days. Even I've seen them in the rivers, both on the St. Croix and in parts of the Apple. And I just, it was like mid afternoon. And I'm like,
Gotcha.
I, I'd rather personally see a client hook that, and I don't need to put that stress on that fish. So I'm just gonna,
Right.
again, I've had a lot of opportunities and had my fingers and hands on big muskies before. So it's just awesome for me to see them in the fishery, to be honest. And especially when the water's so
Yeah.
low and clear, you can really, in streams and rivers, you really see anything if you look for it.
Yeah, for sure. They're pretty visible this time of year.
They are. Yeah. And a lot of the undercut banks are all low. So they're pretty well stacked up. And, yeah, it's
Hmm.
pretty interesting. It was pretty interesting I personally, as somebody that likes to explore, don't have a lot of these opportunities, when it's this low to really learn the rivers and see where these fish are. And, cause you don't even need to fish. Like I said, you could just go down to the river and look.
Right. Exactly. I know that's kind of how it is with our sturgeon sampling. Like we just go down below the dam and the fish are right there. They're plain sight. Um, you can very easily see them. So yeah, which is cool, but kind of gives them away too. So
It does. It does. Um, Gosh, I had one question for you. Um, Maybe a tease for another podcast, but
yeah,
now that you had mentioned bluegills earlier, and I have a good friend of mine who's done a little bit of guest hosting. We're trying to set up a few interviews that we both might be able to have a couple questions. And one of the topics we were discussing was the importance of um, leaving large bluegills in the system. And, everybody thinks, and especially in Wisconsin compared to Minnesota, we have very, very liberal harvest. You can 25 bluegills for the most part. And,
right.
when you take out 25, a pail full of 10, 11-inch bull bluegills, eventually that fishery is going to see a huge issue. So I think if you were interested or knew somebody within the DNR who wanted to talk about that, we would love to have maybe you or somebody else that was in your area to talk about it.
Yeah. I can for sure talk about it, but I know we do have species teams within fisheries management. So like it's based on what the majority of fisheries are in each one of our biologists' particular area.
Sure.
So I'm like on the catfish team and the habitat team. So we do have a panfish team.
Sure.
So I could for sure, hook you up with one of the biologists that's on the panfish team that could really speak to that also. So
that would be awesome. And I don't know, if that person's close to you, that, maybe we could get all four of us on the phone and ask a few questions. That would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll have to set that up then.
Yeah, we'll have to stay in touch. I think it'd be worth both of our time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome. Well, do you have any big plans for the fall or the rest of the summer here? You going fishing anywhere or got any hunting trips?
Yeah, we are planning a trip up somewhere around Hayward. Probably do an Airbnb, on a lake. Just kind of chill out and hang out up there. Do a little bit of fishing. Kind of September time frame. Fall, I usually go elk hunting out west somewhere. Archery.
Nice. Where do you hunt out west?
I normally go to Idaho.
Okay.
But I didn't buy my tags early enough, and they sold out really quick. So, I missed out on that. But we did draw a mule deer tag in Montana this year, which I've never been to Montana hunting. So it's going to be a lot of exploring. So it'll be good. I'm super excited. Well, it's with a rifle, but.
Well, good luck, and you'll have to stay in touch about that because I think I'm just about done with Colorado.
Oh, okay.
I put in for preference points this year, but after the last couple of years with fires and just over the counter bow hunters and just the complex issues, my brother lives out in the Breckenridge area, so we've hunted around that area for a few years now, and
that's awesome.
He's had some success. He lives out there, but I come out for 9 days a year, and I've chased plenty of them around and had a few opportunities, but have never closed the deal. And we've just seen an increase in hunters and a decline in the number of elk in the areas that we hunt. So and he's got a young family, so it's kind of like an interesting dynamic. I love him to death. Sorry, Mark, but I got to buy an out-of-state tag, and he gets away with like a $30 elk tag. And it's like, well, when are you going to step up to the plate one of these years? Let's go hunt somewhere else.
Right.
So you'll have to let me know how Montana goes. It's on the short list. There's only a few of those opportunity states left.
I know, it's really hard. And even Idaho, it's getting harder and harder, and I think it's just going to continue to do so, which is really crappy.
It is.
It sucks, but I get it.
I understand it too. There's only so much resources out there, and I think COVID had its impact, and we all wanted to. And I think the 3R kind of recruitment initiative, I think we're seeing some of that benefit. People wanted to turn outside to do some stuff, and it's kind of the pucker your cheeks moment with us sportsmen that these are some of the dynamics we're going to have to deal with moving forward, because there's just more people, and unfortunately bad habitat practices has probably led to over harvesting over the years from previous generations, and these are the cards we have today.
Right. Yeah.
It's
totally agree.
It's kind of why, again, I started the podcast, is to kind of create some of that awareness with people and get them to just think about different stuff. And hey, you may hunt, deer in Wisconsin, but give a couple bucks to the Sage Grouse Initiative out in Wyoming, and give a crap, because someday you might want to go hunt those birds or just see them on the landscape. So
exactly.
Same thing goes with brook trout and everything else. So it's a complex issue we have today. Nothing seems to be simple anymore.
No, that's for sure. It's hard.
Well, hey, Kasey, if there's anything else you want to say, I'll give you an opportunity, but thank you for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate your time today. It's been fun chatting.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. And we'll have to set, something else up to go on and on about a lot of different topics, but I still appreciate this. It's been a lot of fun. So
well, and you're in my home area I would love to have you back. That area to me, I know a lot about and can talk about a few things, feel comfortable about, and I think there's a lot to tell.
Yeah, super cool. That sounds great.
Thank you, everybody, for checking out this episode of Amazing Outdoors. Follow us on Instagram. You can connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to connect with my professional page. Facebook, I'm just not on it that much. So you can also support the show and check out our website. That's www.amazing.com. My contact information is there if you want to go hit the rivers here over the next 2 months. I'll be out in July and August. Permits here for the St. Croix River, so kick-ass will be catching some big smallmouth and chasing some muskies. Also, please support Jason over at Upland Outfitters. Hunting season is going to be here before you know it, and you don't want to miss your opportunity for these pants. Upland Outfitters, promo code AMAZING, 20% off is still out there. So check it out. Use the promo code and support the podcast. Remember, if you're going to take something from the land, be willing to put it back. So do your part in conservation. We'll see you all soon.